At our last leadership meeting, Major Warner mentioned that he really feels that we need to do a better job at making sure that we have objectives posted in the classroom. And I know as department heads took that back to their department, several teachers approached me and saying, what exactly is it that you're looking for when you enter my classroom? So I want to take this opportunity to talk about what I think are some of the best strategies, and they're from learning targets. A lot of this I know I talked with a lot of teachers last year, and then over the summer there was actually a book that came out. So a lot of this will be based on this book. It's a book, Learning Targets, and it's written by Connie Moss and Susan Brookhart. So a lot of that will be taken, a lot of this presentation will be taken from their book. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at basically first what are objectives, and the second thing, what are learning targets, why they're effective, and how to share them. And then I'll develop this as we go through the year, some other ideas that sort of build in upon this, because it's really about an objective and learning targets. It's about beginning with the end in mind. Knowing where you're going and how you're going to get there is probably one of the most important things that we can ever do as teachers. So what are learning targets? Learning targets are student-friendly descriptions of what you want the students to accomplish in the class. And the students, as a result, will be able to take on a lot of the responsibility for their own learning. In the old way, which was the way that I learned 20, 25 years ago or whatever in college, we had that each student will be able to learning objectives. And really, what were those? Those were behavioral objectives that were really truly only understood by the teacher. But yes, we posted them on the walls to keep the administrators happy when they came in. But really it basically came down to, it's the things that I as a teacher am going to do. And then we added things along the way, I know, like to 80% proficiency and stuff like that. But really, when we start putting all that stuff on the board, do the students buy into that? No way. So the new way is a student and learning centered approach. And I hope you'll see that as we go through how, again, this is a student and learning centered approach. What's the value of these? The students start to take on their responsibility for learning. The students can assess themselves. It becomes a directive, self-motivating approach. So it fits in really well with the ideas of Daniel Pink's Drive and Carol Dweck's Mindset books, which are two must-read books, I think, in terms of motivation. Teachers need to, before they create a learning target, really create effective objectives. And that's based on the following things. What are the essential knowledges and skills that are going to be required? What is the reasoning for this lesson? Why are you teaching this lesson? And what is the trajectory? In other words, what are the various steps that are going to happen, not just within that lesson, but throughout the course of the year? So the first step, define the essential content. What is it that you want the students to learn? This is the lesson's focus. This is the themes that you're approaching throughout the year. These are the skills that you're introducing, that you're having the students master, that things that will impact their future, that build upon their past. Step 2, define the reasoning process that's essential for the lesson. This is the basic thing that we all remember, Bloom's taxonomy. Where are you fitting this in terms of Bloom's taxonomy? Are you engaging the higher order thinking skills, or is it simply going to be something along the create and evaluate aspect of Bloom's taxonomy? Step 3, how are you going to measure it? What can the students do to prove that they truly understand and have accomplished whatever it was that you wanted them to accomplish in class? Now, once you've done those 3 things, you've written a pretty good objective. But I want to take a second to look at what a bad objective is and some of the things that we want to make sure that we avoid. Don't mention an activity, because when you mention an activity, it simply becomes an agenda. So 2 bad examples, and I haven't seen these. Students will conduct a lab on mass and volume, or students will play a review game on the causes of World War II. This really doesn't tell us what you want the students to learn. Quick way that you can check to see if your objective is based on student learning, simply add at the end of the lesson to the objective that you've posted. So if we looked at the previous one, at the end of the lesson, students will conduct a lab on mass and volume. Well, no, it's not the end of the lesson. That was what you were doing. That was the activity. So we can tweak the objective real quickly to see you can change it. Students will measure and calculate mass and volume. That would be the purpose of the lab. So now, can we throw at the end of the lesson in front of that? Surely we can. At the end of the lesson, students will measure and calculate mass and volume. Quick check, the objective works. So again, let's just wrap it up. This part, what is an objective? It's a description of what each student will know and be able to do as a result of learning. Now I also want to make sure, caution you against using these verbs. These are verbs that really are very difficult for the students to understand exactly what you want and very difficult for you to measure. So for example, and one that's not on here is students will state their opinion on. So let's say you use students will state their opinion on the presidential election of 2012. Now I know what you want with that objective. You want them to be able to support one of the candidates. But what happens if the student comes back and says, well, my opinion is both candidates stink, and that might be legit, and politics is stupid, it doesn't make any difference. Well, yeah, that is their opinion, so they have, I guess, actually met your objective. Again, you can see how difficult it is to understand and to measure when you use some of these words. So wrapping it up, what's a good objective? It's clear, it's specific, it focuses on thinking. There's a way that you can demonstrate mastery, they're measurable, and they're aligned with the standards. So once you've done all of those things and you've had these good objectives, you want to state the learning target. This is what I think should belong on the board in your classroom. This is what you're going to share with the students throughout the instructional period. It's written from the student's point of view, so the students can understand it, and again, so the students can take on the responsibility along with you to ensure that learning is taking place and mastery is being achieved in your classroom.